I'm Chelsea, 34 years old from Portland. For the past 10 years, I have dedicated my life to teaching elementary school kids and raising my son as a single mom. It all changed when my husband walked out, leaving me blindsided by our marriage, his affair, and $20,000 in debt I never knew existed. That morning when my 10-year-old son Noah looked up at me with determined eyes, saying he fixed everything, I had no idea his innocent attempt to help would completely transform our lives forever. Where are you watching from today? Drop it in the comments, hit subscribe, and stay with me to see how my child's pure intentions set off a chain of events that none of us saw coming. Growing up in a middle-class family in Portland shaped my view of what normal life should be. My parents worked hard, we took modest vacations, and I was taught that honesty and hard work were the foundations of a good life. These values guided me through college, where I pursued my dream of becoming a teacher passionate about shaping young minds. It was at a regional teaching conference where I first met James. I was 22, fresh out of college, and eager to implement new educational techniques. He was 26, working in the finance department for the school district. Our eyes met across a crowded workshop on budget planning for classroom projects. He approached me afterward, complimented my questions during the session, and asked if I wanted to grab coffee. What started as a professional conversation quickly became personal. James had this captivating way of making me feel like the most interesting person in any room. His ambition was attractive. He talked about moving from educational finance to corporate work, about building a life where we could have both purpose and comfort. After dating for just 8 months, he proposed during a weekend trip to the Oregon coast, the waves crashing behind us as I said yes through happy tears. Our wedding was simple but beautiful. We saved money by having it at my parents' backyard, with fairy lights strung through the trees and homemade food prepared by family members. Instead of an expensive honeymoon, we put a down payment on a small starter home in a decent neighborhood. James said we were investing in our future rather than a fleeting vacation, and I admired his practical thinking. The early years of marriage were filled with weekend road trips, fixing up our little house together and saving for our future. James moved from the school district to entry-level corporate finance, while I secured a position teaching 3rd grade at Pinewood Elementary. We were building our dream piece by piece, and every small achievement felt like a milestone on our journey. When I found out I was pregnant 3 years into our marriage, James spun me around the kitchen, his face alight with joy. We converted the small home office into a nursery painting, the walls sky blue, regardless of whether we were having a boy or girl. When Noah arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning, James held him with such tender care that I fell in love with my husband all over again. Noah brought so much light into our lives. He was an easy baby who grew into a curious toddler and then a thoughtful child. From early on, he showed remarkable empathy, noticing when other children were upset on the playground or when I had a rough day at work. His perceptiveness sometimes surprised me. He could read the room better than some adults I knew. As Noah grew, James climbed the corporate ladder. By the time Noah was 7, James had secured a management position at Financial Partners International, a prestigious firm downtown. The increased salary allowed us to move to a larger house in a neighborhood with excellent schools. Our new home had a backyard where Noah could play, a modern kitchen, where I loved to bake weekend treats, and even a small study where James often worked late into the evening. My teaching career flourished alongside his. I was recognized as Teacher of the Year at my school, led curriculum development committees, and started a popular after-school reading program. The parents respected me, my colleagues valued my input, and most importantly, I saw the difference I was making in my students' lives every day. Beyond school, I volunteered for community cleanup events and helped organize annual neighborhood block parties where families gathered to strengthen our community bonds. As Noah approached his 10th birthday, he had grown into a remarkably bright and compassionate boy. His teachers commented on both his academic aptitude and his kindness toward struggling classmates. He inherited my love of reading and James' analytical mind, often asking questions that made us both think. Noah and James would spend Sunday mornings building increasingly complex model airplanes, while Noah and I had our special Saturday baking sessions, creating everything from chocolate chip cookies to ambitious layer cakes. We established beautiful family traditions that anchored our lives. bedtime reading rituals, summer camping trips to Mount Hood, and holiday cookie exchanges with neighbors. Our home was often filled with the laughter of Noah's friends during playdates or birthday parties. From the outside, and even from my perspective, we were living the life we'd planned so carefully. The first subtle changes in James' behavior were easy to dismiss. The occasional late night at the office became more frequent. Family dinner conversations that once lasted hours gradually shortened as James checked his phone or brought work home. He started missing Noah's soccer games due to important meetings. When I asked about his distraction, he blamed work stress and talked about a big project that could lead to a significant promotion. I chose to focus on maintaining our family stability. When James missed dinner, Noah and I would have special mom and son meals. When he was too busy for weekend outings, I took Noah to museums, parks, and libraries. I wanted to be understanding of the pressures James faced at work, believing that his dedication would benefit our family in the long run. Noah and I developed an even deeper bond during this time. Our weekend baking sessions expanded to include more elaborate recipes, with Noah proudly mastering the perfect chocolate mousse by age 9. We established a nightly reading ritual, taking turns reading chapters from adventure series and discussing the characters' choices. Noah would often surprise me with his insights, seeing connections in the story I had missed. Looking back, I realized Noah was observing more than I knew. His quiet intelligence picked up on the subtle shifts in our family dynamic long before I acknowledged them. He started asking questions like, "Why is Dad always on his phone?" or "Does Dad still like our cookies?" I reassured him that Daddy was just busy, never imagining how drastically our lives would change in the coming months. Just last year, as I decorated our home for Noah's 10th birthday party, everything seemed stable. James had promised to leave work early to help, and though he arrived just minutes before guests, his enthusiastic participation in the celebration erased my concerns. As Noah blew out his candles with friends cheering and James' arm around my waist, I remember thinking how fortunate we were. The foundation of our life together seemed unshakable. I had no idea that within months that foundation would crumble completely. The transition from suspicion to certainty is a painful journey. For me, it began with James becoming unusually protective of his phone. He had always been open about his communications, often asking me to respond to texts while he was driving or handing me his phone to look up information. But suddenly his phone was password protected, always face down, and he would step away to take calls. Initially, I respected his privacy. We all need personal space, and I didn't want to be the suspicious, controlling wife. But then came the unexplained expenses. While reviewing our monthly credit card statement, an ordinary task in our household, I noticed charges from restaurants I'd never heard of, a significant purchase at a jewelry store that hadn't been gifted to me, and weekend hotel charges in Seattle when James had told me he was attending a conference in Tacoma. When I casually asked about these discrepancies, James became immediately defensive. "Are you monitoring my spending now?" he snapped, taking me aback. "That jewelry was your Christmas gift, but thanks for ruining the surprise." The holidays were still months away, but I apologized, feeling guilty for questioning him. He explained the restaurant charges as business meals and the hotel discrepancy as a last-minute venue change for the conference. I chose to believe him. Noah was in the kitchen doing homework during this exchange, and though we kept our voices low, his small frown told me he sensed the tension. Later that night, he asked, "Is Daddy mad at us?" The innocence of his question broke my heart. "No, sweetheart," I assured him. "Grown-ups just have complicated days sometimes." Over the next few weeks, James became increasingly distant with both of us. He missed Noah's science fair despite promising to attend. Our family dinners became silent affairs when he was present at all. Noah stopped asking when Dad would be home, accepting his absence as the new normal. The definitive moment came when James left his phone at home one morning. When it chimed with a message, I debated respecting his privacy, but found myself unlocking it with his birthday, a code he hadn't yet changed. The message preview showed, "Miss you already. Last night was amazing. When can you get away again, M?" My hands trembled as I set down the phone. When confronted that evening, James dismissed it as a work colleague being inappropriately friendly. "She's new and doesn't understand professional boundaries," he claimed. "I'll speak with her about it." His explanation seemed rehearsed too smooth, but I was still not ready to believe the worst. A week later, my friend Amanda called. "Chelsea, I don't know how to tell you this, but I just saw James at Riverview Restaurant with a young woman. They were intimate." Her voice was gentle but firm. "I thought you should know." I thanked her, hung up, and sat motionless at the kitchen table. Riverview was expensive, romantic, and 40 minutes from our neighborhood nowhere, James would randomly run into a colleague. After putting Noah to bed with a forced smile and a story about a brave night, I made a decision I never thought I'd make. The following evening, when James texted that he was working late, I dropped Noah at my parents' house and drove downtown. I parked near James' office and waited. At 7:30, I watched him exit the building with a woman I'd never seen before. She was younger than me, perhaps 26 or 27, with long blonde hair and a confident stride. James' hand rested on her lower back as they walked to his car. My car, technically, as it was the newer model we had purchased together for family use. I followed them to an upscale apartment complex in a trendy neighborhood. Rather than parking in the visitor section, James used a key card to access the resident garage. I waited in my parents' aging sedan, numb, as the minutes ticked by. He didn't emerge after 30 minutes nor after an hour. At home later that night, I waited up until James returned at 11:40. He seemed startled to find me still awake, sitting in the dimly lit living room. "You weren't working late," I said simply. His expression shifted from surprise to resignation. "How did you find out? Does it matter?" My voice remained calm, surprising even myself. "Who is she?" After a moment of silence, he sighed. "Megan. She works in the marketing department." "How long?" "Chelsea." "How long?" "6 months." He didn't meet my eyes. "It just happened. We connected at the company retreat. I didn't plan it." "Affairs rarely start with a plan." I said, my education in literature providing words when my heart had none. "They start with a choice. You made that choice every day for 6 months." What followed was a devastating conversation where James showed remarkably little remorse. He claimed he had outgrown our marriage, that he and Megan understood each other on a different level. Each word was another crack in the foundation of the life I thought we had built together. I didn't realize Noah had woken up until I heard a small sound from the hallway. How much had he heard? James and I both froze, looking at our son standing in his dinosaur pajamas, confusion and fear on his small face. "Why are you guys fighting?" he asked in a small voice. I moved to him immediately. "Everything's okay, honey. Daddy and I just need to talk about grown-up things. Let's get you back to bed." "No, it's fine," James said, suddenly gathering his keys. "I was just leaving anyway." "Leaving where?" Noah asked, his voice rising with alarm. "It's nighttime." James looked at him with a strange mixture of guilt and detachment. "I need some time away, buddy. Mom will explain." And with that inadequate goodbye, James went upstairs, packed a bag, and left our home. Noah's confused questions I couldn't answer followed me throughout this surreal process. Where's Dad going? When is he coming back? Did I do something wrong? After James slammed the door behind him, the dam of composure I'd maintained finally broke. I collapsed onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably. Noah, my sweet boy, climbed next to me and placed his small hand on my shoulder, mimicking the way I comforted him when he was upset. "Don't cry, Mom," he whispered, his own eyes filling with tears he tried to hide. "Please don't cry." That night I held Noah until he fell asleep in my arms, his face still showing traces of confusion and fear. I couldn't bring myself to move him to his own bed, finding comfort in his steady breathing beside me. As I stared at the ceiling, I tried to figure out how to shield him from the pain while being truthful enough to help him understand why his father had walked out. The next morning, Noah asked directly, "Is Dad coming back home?" I took a deep breath. "I don't know, sweetheart. Right now, Dad thinks he needs some time away from our house. Because he loves someone else now." Noah's perceptiveness cut to the heart of the matter. I hesitated, then nodded slowly. Sometimes adults make choices that hurt the people they care about. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. Dad still loves you very much. I hoped the last part was true for Noah's sake. But he doesn't love you anymore. Noah's eyes, so like his father's, searched mine. The question broke my heart all over again. People's feelings change sometimes. was all I could manage. The following days passed in a blur of tears behind bathroom doors, forced smiles for Noah's benefit, and unanswered texts to James. I tried to maintain Noah's routine to give him stability, but each night when I tucked him in, his questions became harder to answer. Where is Dad sleeping? Is he living with the other lady now? Will I still see him on weekends? I couldn't answer what I didn't know. James had effectively disappeared from our lives, ignoring my attempts at communication about Noah, about practical matters, about the gaping hole he'd left in our family. All I had was the growing realization that I needed to somehow hold it together for the one person who mattered most, my son, who was watching me with eyes that saw far too much. 1 week after James walked out, I discovered something that turned my emotional devastation into pure panic. Noah was at school, and I was searching for our insurance documents to check if he was still covered. In James's home office, I found a locked drawer I'd never paid attention to before. Using a letter opener, I managed to force it open. Inside were statements from credit cards I never knew existed, all in my name. Page after page of charges, designer clothing, expensive electronics, weekend trips to vineyards and coastal resorts. With shaking hands, I calculated the total: just over $20,000 of debt accumulated over the past 7 months. My mind raced through memories of joint account paperwork I'd signed years ago, trusting James completely with our finances given his expertise. He had apparently used those documents to open new credit lines in my name while maintaining our regular family accounts separately. The discovery sent me into a full-blown panic attack. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think beyond the numbers swimming before my eyes. $20,000 when I made less than $60,000 annually as a teacher. $20,000 with a mortgage, car payments, and all the expenses of raising a child. $20,000 of luxury purchases that weren't even in our home. When I could finally move again, I called James repeatedly. His phone went straight to voicemail. I sent desperate texts. We need to talk about these credit cards now. How could you put all this debt in my name? What about Noah's future? After hours of silence, a single cold text arrived. Not my problem anymore. Figure it out. Those 7 words revealed the true character of the man I had loved for 12 years, the father of my child. In that moment, the last shreds of love I felt for James evaporated, replaced by a cold fury that gave me enough strength to call the bank. The news got worse. James had emptied our joint savings account the day after he left the money we had been putting aside for Noah's college fund and our retirement. Legal, they informed me, as both our names were on the account. The representative's voice held sympathy, but no solutions. The next day I met with a lawyer recommended by the school counselor, explaining my situation in a voice that cracked despite my efforts to remain composed. Her assessment was blunt. Until the divorce was finalized, my options for contesting the debt were limited, especially if I had technically signed authorization forms. We could fight it in court, but that would take money I didn't have. "What about the house?" I asked. She looked at me with kind but realistic eyes. "If you can't make the payments along with these new debts, you may need to consider selling." The thought of uprooting Noah from the only home he'd known right after his father abandoned him was unbearable. But the numbers didn't lie. My teacher's salary couldn't cover everything, especially with the high interest rates on the cards James had opened. That evening I sat at our kitchen table with spreadsheets, calculators, and mounting dread. Even cutting out every non-essential expense, selling my car for a cheaper model, and taking on weekend tutoring work, I couldn't make the numbers work. The debt James had saddled me with was simply too large. Noah came into the kitchen as I was working, immediately noticing the shift from our usual spaghetti and meatballs to simple pasta with canned sauce. "Are we having budget dinner?" he asked, a phrase he'd picked up from a classmate whose parents had financial difficulties. "Just trying something different," I said with false brightness. "Do you like it?" He nodded and took another bite, though I could tell he wasn't convinced. "Where's the garlic bread we always have?" "We'll have that next time," I promised, hating the little sacrifices that were just the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, I sold my grandmother's jewelry, the good china we'd received as wedding gifts, and even the expensive camera I'd used to document Noah's childhood. Each sale felt like giving away pieces of our past, but they provided enough to make the minimum payments on the credit cards for now. I took on tutoring sessions every Saturday while Noah stayed with our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. After full days of teaching, I would come home, spend precious little time with Noah, then stay up until midnight grading papers and planning lessons, only to lie awake worrying about how I would make next month's payments. The exhaustion was overwhelming, but worse was pretending everything was normal for Noah's sake. I kept up appearances at school, never letting my colleagues see the depth of my struggle. At home, I saved my tears for the shower or late at night when Noah was asleep. But children sense more than we realize. One night, I thought Noah was sleeping when I sat on the kitchen floor, bills spread around me, quietly sobbing into a dish towel to muffle the sound. "Mom." His small voice from the doorway made me quickly wipe my eyes. "Why are you crying again?" "Just a little tired, sweetie," I said, gathering the papers. He came and sat beside me on the cold tile floor. "You cry every night when you think I'm asleep," he said matter-of-factly. "Is it because of the bills?" His perception stunned me. I had tried so hard to shield him from our financial reality, but he had been watching all along. In that moment, looking at his solemn little face, I reached my breaking point. I couldn't carry this burden alone anymore, couldn't keep up the pretense that everything was fine when it so clearly wasn't. "Is it because Dad took all the money?" Noah asked, his eyes showing a maturity beyond his 10 years. The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" Noah shrugged, looking down at the bills scattered across the kitchen floor. "I heard you talking on the phone to Aunt Amanda. You said Dad took the savings and left you with a lot of bills." I felt a pang of guilt that he'd overheard that conversation, but also a strange relief. The exhaustion of hiding our situation suddenly seemed pointless. Noah already knew more than I'd realized. "Yes," I admitted, deciding that an age-appropriate version of the truth was better than more pretending. "Dad made some choices that left us with bills we need to pay, and it's hard for me to figure out how to pay them all." "Is that why we don't go to the grocery store anymore?" I hadn't realized he'd noticed we'd been eating from our pantry reserves. "Yes, sweetie. I'm trying to be careful with our money right now." Noah nodded thoughtfully. "Tyler's parents got divorced last year. He said they had to move to a smaller house." "That might happen to us too," I said gently, watching his face for signs of distress. To my surprise, he simply nodded again. "That's okay, as long as we're together." He leaned against me. "Don't worry, Mom. We'll be all right." His simple faith brought fresh tears to my eyes, but different ones this time. Through all this chaos, I had somehow raised a child with extraordinary empathy and resilience. I hugged him tightly, drawing strength from his small body against mine. "We will be all right," I echoed, making it a promise to us both. The next morning, I noticed a shift in Noah's behavior. As I prepared his breakfast, he asked unexpectedly, "Where does Dad work again?" "Financial Partners International." I answered, surprised by the question. "Why do you ask?" "Just wondering," he said too casually. "What does he do there exactly?" I explained in simple terms about financial management and corporate accounts, watching Noah's unusual interest with curiosity. Before I could ask more, he quickly changed the subject to his upcoming science project. That afternoon, when I picked him up from school, he asked to use my old laptop for his homework. This wasn't unusual. Noah often researched topics online for school projects. What was strange was how secretive he became, turning the screen away whenever I walked past and closing tabs quickly if I came near. "What are you working on so intensely?" I asked, placing a snack beside him. "It's a special project," he said vaguely. "For school." Too exhausted from another day of teaching while worrying about our finances, I didn't press further. Whatever kept him occupied and seemingly positive was welcome during this difficult time. The following day, Noah asked if he could visit his friend Tyler after school. "Tyler's dad knows a lot about money stuff," he mentioned casually. "He works with computers and banks." I vaguely recalled that Tyler's father worked in financial security of some kind. The playdate would give me time to call more creditors and try to negotiate payment plans, so I readily agreed. "That sounds fine. I'll pick you up at 6. Noah's face lit up with the first genuine smile I'd seen in weeks. "Thanks, Mom. This is really important." His enthusiasm seemed disproportionate to a simple playdate, but I was grateful for anything that brought him joy during this difficult time. While Noah was at Tyler's house, I received a strange call from Tyler's father, Mark. "Chelsea, I hope you don't mind, but Noah's been asking me some very specific questions about financial fraud and company policies." My stomach tightened. "What kind of questions?" "About whether companies track employees' expenses, how they handle misuse of funds, and what happens when someone uses another person's identity for credit cards." His tone was cautious. "Is everything okay at home?" These are unusual questions for a 10-year-old. I briefly explained our situation, embarrassed but too tired to maintain pretenses. Mark's voice grew concerned. "If what you're describing is accurate, that's serious financial fraud. There are protections for this kind of situation." "I've spoken to a lawyer," I said wearily. "There's not much I can do until the divorce is finalized, and even then it's complicated." "There might be other approaches," Mark said cryptically. "Let me think about this. And don't worry about Noah, he and Tyler are working on a video game right now." When I picked up Noah later, he was unusually quiet, but had a certain determination in his expression. As we drove home, he suddenly announced, "It's okay, Mom. I took care of it." "Took care of what, sweetie?" I asked, glancing at him in the rearview mirror. "The money problem," he said confidently. "You don't have to worry anymore." A chill ran through me. "Noah, what exactly did you do?" He looked out the window. "It's a surprise. You'll see." That night, I found a notebook in Noah's backpack while looking for a permission slip. Inside were scribbled notes with phrases like "evidence" and Dad's computer password. One page had FBI HR email written and circled multiple times. I confronted Noah before bedtime, holding up the notebook. "Honey, what is all this?" He took the notebook quickly. "It's nothing. Just ideas." "Noah, please tell me what you're planning. You can't fix adult problems, sweetie." His expression turned stubborn, so like his father's that it hurt to see. "Tyler's dad says sometimes people do bad things with money, and they have to be caught." "What exactly did you and Tyler's dad talk about?" I pressed. "It's a surprise to help you," he insisted. "You won't have to cry about money anymore." Despite further questioning, Noah remained secretive. I went to bed troubled, but assumed whatever plan Noah had was just a child's fantasy of solving his mother's problems. What real action could a 10-year-old possibly take? The next day, I overheard Noah on the house phone speaking in whispered tones. "Yes, I remember the password. No, she doesn't know yet. I found the emails about the company credit card, too." When he saw me, he quickly hung up. "Just talking to Tyler about homework," he said too innocently. I should have pressed harder, should have demanded to know exactly what he was doing. But between teaching all day, tutoring extra hours, and the constant stress of our financial situation, I lacked the energy for what seemed like a harmless childhood secret. "Just remember that grown-up problems need grown-up solutions," I told him. "You don't need to worry about these things." Noah nodded solemnly. "I know, Mom, but sometimes kids can see things grown-ups miss." His words would prove prophetic in ways I couldn't imagine. As he headed off to his room, he turned back with a cryptic comment that should have alarmed me more than it did. "You won't have to cry about money anymore, I promise." 3 days later, my classroom phone rang during lunch break. Seeing it was Noah's school, my heart immediately raced. School nurses only call during the day for emergencies. "Mrs. Carter, this is Ms. Benson from the office. Noah is here and asking to call you. He seems quite upset." "Put him on, please," I said, already gathering my things. "Mom," Noah's voice was high and shaking, "I think I did something bad, really bad." "What happened? Are you hurt?" A dozen horrible scenarios flashed through my mind. "No, I'm not hurt." His voice dropped to a whisper. "But Dad called the school. He's really, really mad. He said I'm in big trouble. I think I messed everything up worse. Stay right there. I'm coming to get you." I promised, already asking a colleague to cover my afternoon classes. The 15-minute drive to Noah's school was torture, my mind racing with possibilities. What could Noah possibly have done to provoke James to call the school when he had been completely absent for weeks? When I arrived, Noah was sitting in the office, pale and trembling. The moment he saw me, he burst into tears, real heartbroken sobs that shook his small frame. I gathered him in my arms, feeling his tears soak through my blouse. "It's okay, honey. Whatever happened, we'll figure it out together." I soothed, though dread filled my stomach. In the car, Noah finally confessed. Between hiccuping sobs, he explained that he had used my old laptop to access James's personal email using a password he remembered. He had discovered emails between James and Megan, including discussions about expensive gifts and weekends away. More importantly, he had found emails about James using his corporate expense account for personal purchases. "Tyler's dad said that's fraud," Noah explained, wiping his nose on his sleeve. "He said companies have rules against using work money for girlfriend stuff." With growing horror, I realized what Noah had done. "I wrote an email to Dad's boss," he continued, his voice small. "I used Dad's email so they would believe it. I told them about Megan and the credit cards and how he took all our money. I showed them the emails where Dad talked about charging things for Megan to the company." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "You sent an email pretending to be your father to his company." Noah nodded miserably. "Tyler helped me find the right email addresses. We sent it to his boss and the HR department and something called compliance." He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. "Dad called the school and told them to tell me I'm in big trouble. He said I ruined everything. Did I make it worse, Mom?" We arrived home to find our answering machine blinking with messages. James's voice filled our kitchen, each message more furious than the last. "What the hell did you put Noah up to? Do you know what you've done? They're launching an internal investigation because of that email. I'll lose my job over this." The final message was different from a woman who introduced herself as Diane Reynolds from Financial Partners International's Human Resources Department, asking me to call regarding an urgent matter. Noah's face crumpled as the messages played. "I'm sorry, Mom. I was just trying to make him give our money back. Tyler's dad said companies have special investigators for money cheating." I knelt to Noah's level, my own shock and fear pushed aside by his distress. "Noah, listen to me. You were trying to help, and I love you for that. But this is exactly what I meant about adult problems needing adult solutions." "Are we in trouble with the police?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "No, sweetie," I assured him, though I wasn't entirely certain. "But this is a complicated situation that I need to handle." My phone rang. The caller ID showed James's number. I silenced it, unwilling to subject Noah to his father's rage. "I need to make some calls," I told Noah. "Why don't you go to your room for a little while?" As Noah trudged upstairs, my phone pinged with text messages from James. "Legal will be involved. You'll regret this. I'm coming over to deal with this mess." The last message sent a chill through me. James had never been physically violent, but I had never seen him this angry either. The thought of confronting him alone was terrifying. I called Amanda, my voice shaking as I explained the situation. "James is threatening to come over. I don't want Noah to see him like this." "I'll be there in 15 minutes, she said without hesitation. "Pack an overnight bag for Noah just in case." While waiting for Amanda, I called Diane Reynolds back, stepping onto the back porch for privacy. Her tone was professional, but guarded. "Mrs. Carter, we've received some concerning information regarding your husband, James Carter. While I cannot discuss details of an internal investigation, I wanted to inform you that we take these matters very seriously and would appreciate speaking with you in person." "My 10-year-old son sent that email," I admitted. "He accessed his father's account without permission. He was trying to help after discovering the debt his father left us with." There was a pause. "I see. That complicates matters. However, the content of the message contains allegations we're obligated to investigate regardless of the source. Would you be willing to meet tomorrow morning?" I agreed to a 9 o'clock meeting, my heart pounding. As I hung up, Amanda's car pulled into the driveway. She hugged me tightly before I could say a word. "Noah's in his room," I said quietly. "He's devastated. He thought he was fixing everything." Amanda shook her head. "Kids see black and white. They think justice is simple." "Poor little guy." I quickly explained about the company meeting the next morning. "I don't know what to expect. James is threatening legal action." "Let him threaten," Amanda said firmly. "I'll stay with Noah tomorrow, and tonight too if you want." Noah came downstairs, his eyes red-rimmed, carrying his favorite stuffed bear he hadn't slept with since he was 7. "Am I going to Aunt Amanda's?" he asked quietly. "Just for a little while," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to talk to some people about what happened." Noah's face crumpled again. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I was just trying to be the man of the house since Dad left. I thought I could fix it." His words broke my heart. I gathered him close, breathing in the little boy scent of him shampoo and playground and innocence. "You don't need to be the man of the house. You just need to be Noah, my amazing, kind 10-year-old boy." As Amanda led Noah to her car, he turned back with eyes far too burdened for a child. "Will you tell me what happens, even if it's bad?" I nodded, making a silent promise to protect him from as much pain as possible while being honest enough to help him learn from this experience. "I promise, honey. Adults will handle this now." Watching them drive away, I faced the empty house with a mixture of dread and strange determination. Tomorrow would determine whether Noah's impulsive action would make our situation worse or become an unexpected turning point. Either way, I had to be strong enough to face whatever came next for both our sakes. The Financial Partners International building dominated downtown, its glass exterior reflecting clouds and neighboring skyscrapers. I had visited James here for lunch dates early in his career, but today I walked through the revolving doors with a very different purpose, clutching my purse like a shield. At the security desk, I gave my name and was immediately issued a visitor badge. "14th floor, Ms. Reynolds is expecting you," the guard said. His neutral tone gave nothing away, but I felt conspicuous, certain everyone could somehow tell why I was here. The elevator ride seemed endless. I had dressed carefully, a modest navy dress that projected professionalism without ostentation. My teacher clothes, Amanda had called them when helping me choose. "You need to look like the responsible adult in this situation." Diane Reynolds greeted me at the elevator bank, a tall woman with a silver bob and kind eyes behind stylish glasses. "Thank you for coming, Mrs. Carter. Please follow me." Instead of a private office, she led me to a conference room where 3 people waited: an older man with an expensive suit and steel gray hair, a younger woman with a legal pad, and a middle-aged man with a laptop open before him. "This is Edward Jameson, our Chief Financial Officer," Diane introduced. "Leslie Wright from Legal, and Robert Chen from Internal Audit." Their expressions were unreadable, but not hostile. After initial pleasantries, Edward Jameson got straight to the point. "Mrs. Carter, we understand your son sent the email we received. However, the allegations contained within are extremely serious and align with some irregularities our audit team had already flagged." Leslie Wright picked up seamlessly. "We want to be clear that we're not holding a 10-year-old responsible for unauthorized access. Our concern is the content regarding potential misappropriation of company resources." My hands trembled slightly in my lap. I only learned of my husband's financial decisions recently. After he left, I discovered credit card debt in my name that I never authorized. I also learned he had emptied our savings account. Robert Chen typed as I spoke. "And the claims about your husband's relationship with another employee. Her name is Megan. She works in marketing here, I believe. My husband has been involved with her for at least 6 months, possibly longer." Diane exchanged glances with her colleagues. "Megan Peterson from marketing. Yes, we're aware of that relationship now." Edward leaned forward. "Mrs. Carter, while we regret the circumstances, your son's email accelerated an investigation that was already underway. We had noticed unusual expense patterns, but lacked concrete evidence of wrongdoing." "The email contained references to specific transactions," Leslie added. "We've been able to verify that company funds were indeed used for personal expenses, including gifts and travel unrelated to business purposes." "Am I and my son in legal trouble?" I asked directly the question that had kept me awake all night. Leslie shook her head. "While we cannot condone unauthorized access to company systems, we have no intention of pursuing any action against a child who is clearly trying to protect his mother. Our legal focus is entirely on the misappropriation of company funds." Relief washed over me, but was quickly tempered when Edward spoke again. "We would like to offer you a proposal," he said carefully. "Our investigation indicates financial impropriety going back approximately 18 months, well beyond the personal relationship that seems to have accelerated the spending. If you're willing to provide documentation of the credit cards opened in your name and cooperate with our internal investigation, the company is prepared to consider restitution for the fraudulent debt as part of our recovery process." Restitution, I repeated, hardly daring to hope. Financial Partners International takes corporate ethics extremely seriously, Diane explained. When an employee abuses their position to commit fraud that harms others, we believe we have a responsibility to make it right. Leslie slid a folder across the table. "This is a confidentiality agreement regarding the investigation, not a waiver of your rights. We'd like you to review it with your attorney before signing." As I reached for the folder, the conference room door burst open. James stood in the doorway, his face flushed with anger. Behind him, a security guard looked apologetic. "I'm sorry, Mr. Jameson. He insisted on joining the meeting as it concerned him." "This is completely inappropriate," James snapped, glaring at me. "Using a child to make false accusations is a new low Chelsea." Edward Jameson stood, his authority filling the room. "Mr. Carter, you were explicitly instructed not to contact Mrs. Carter or attempt to interfere with this investigation. Your presence here violates that directive." "She put our son up to this." James pointed at me, his composure cracking. "A 10-year-old doesn't understand corporate finance or expense policies." "Actually," Robert Chen spoke up, "the email contained specific references to transactions that would only be known to someone with access to your accounts. Given that these transactions have now been verified as personal expenses charged to corporate accounts, the source of the information seems secondary to its accuracy." James's face paled slightly. "This is a misunderstanding. Those expenses were business-related." "The Tiffany bracelet purchased on Valentine's Day?" Leslie asked, consulting her notes. "The weekend at Cascade Mountain Resort under the name Peterson, not Carter." "The dinner at Le Bistro, where you were observed by multiple witnesses in a romantic situation with Ms. Peterson, all charged to your corporate card or submitted as reimbursements with falsified documentation." James looked around the room, suddenly realizing his position. "I can explain each of those." "You'll have that opportunity during your formal interview with HR and legal this afternoon," Edward stated flatly. "For now, I suggest you return to your office and prepare your documentation." As James turned to leave, Megan appeared in the hallway. She looked younger in person, her professional attire not quite hiding her uncertainty. Our eyes met briefly before James pushed past her, saying something I couldn't hear. Edward turned back to me. "I apologize for the interruption, Mrs. Carter. As I was saying, we'd like you to consider our proposal for cooperation." The meeting continued for another 30 minutes as we discussed next steps. I would provide my financial records, speak with their investigators, and potentially participate in a more formal statement process. In exchange, they would consider covering the fraudulent debt as part of their recovery from James. As I left the conference room, I nearly collided with Megan in the hallway. She had clearly been waiting. "Mrs. Carter," her voice was hesitant. I didn't know about the debt, or that he had a son. He told me he was separated for over a year and that you had agreed to divorce." Her naivety might have angered me weeks ago, but now I just felt tired. "He lied to both of us then." "I'm so sorry," she said, and seemed to mean it. "I never would have, if I'd known." "It doesn't matter now," I replied. And strangely, it didn't. Looking at this young woman, I realized she was just another victim of James's manipulations, albeit one who had made poor choices. In the elevator descending to the lobby, I felt a weight lifting. For the first time since James left, I had hoped that Noah and I might emerge from this nightmare without financial ruin. As the doors opened to the lobby, I nearly walked into a man waiting to enter. "Mrs. Carter, I'm Mark Turner-Tyler's dad. I was hoping to catch you." I recognized Noah's friend's father from school events, though we had only spoken briefly before the fateful playdate. "Mr. Turner, I don't know whether to thank you or—" He gestured toward the building's small cafe. "Could we talk for a moment?" Over coffee, Mark explained his role as a financial crimes investigator for a banking consortium. When Noah started asking questions, I recognized the patterns immediately. I gave him general information about corporate policies, but I had no idea he would take such direct action. "He was trying to help," I said, still defending my son despite the chaos he had inadvertently caused. Mark nodded. That's exactly why I came today. I was concerned about potential repercussions. I have contacts at FPI and made some discreet inquiries this morning. From what I understand, the company was already investigating James for other irregularities. Noah's email just connected some dots they hadn't yet linked. They've offered to help with the debt, I told him, still hardly believing it. That's excellent news, and I may be able to help further. He placed a business card on the table. My expertise is in financial identity fraud. The credit cards opened in your name without your knowledge constitute a clear case. If you'd like, I can guide you through the process of filing formal complaints with the credit bureaus and relevant authorities. When I returned home, Amanda was waiting anxiously. How bad is it? To her surprise, I smiled a genuine smile for the first time in weeks. It's actually hopeful. The company was already investigating James. They're talking about helping with the debt. And I met with Tyler's father. He's going to help me challenge the fraudulent credit cards. That's amazing. She hugged me tightly. Noah will be so relieved. He's been beside himself, convinced he ruined everything. Where is he? I asked suddenly, eager to reassure my son. Upstairs. He wouldn't eat lunch, wouldn't even play video games. He's just been waiting for you. I found Noah curled on his bed, clutching his bear. When he saw me, he sat up, his expression braced for bad news. Are we in big trouble? He asked in a small voice. I sat beside him, taking his hands in mine. No, sweetheart, we're not in trouble. Actually, you might have helped us in a way you didn't expect. As I explained what had happened in simple terms, his face gradually transformed from worry to cautious hope. So Dad's company might help with the money he took, he asked, trying to understand. They might. And more importantly, they're not upset with you or me. Noah considered this. Is Dad going to jail? The question caught me off guard. I don't know. That's not for us to decide. What's important is that you and I are going to be okay. Noah leaned against me, exhaustion evident in his small frame. I'm sorry I didn't tell you what I was doing. I just wanted to fix everything. I know, baby. I kissed the top of his head. But remember what I said about adult problems. They need adult solutions, he recited. That's right. And from now on, we talk to each other about everything, okay? No more secrets, even when we're trying to protect each other. Noah nodded solemnly. No more secrets. That promise would become the foundation of our healing in the difficult but hopeful days ahead. The weeks following that pivotal meeting brought changes I could never have anticipated. James was placed on administrative leave pending the investigation, and 3 days later, the company announced his termination for violations of corporate policies and ethical standards. What they didn't announce publicly, but Edward Jameson told me privately, was that their audit had uncovered a pattern of financial misappropriation dating back nearly 2 years. The company's legal team moved swiftly. They offered me a confidential settlement agreement in exchange for my cooperation with their investigation and a non-disclosure agreement. They would cover the $20,000 in fraudulent debt and provide an additional compensation package to recognize the collateral damage to our family. The settlement came with no strings attached regarding my divorce proceedings, which they viewed as a separate matter. Mark Turner proved invaluable, guiding me through the process of filing identity theft reports with the credit bureaus and the Federal Trade Commission. With his expertise and documentation from Financial Partners International's investigation, the credit card companies agreed to remove the fraudulent accounts from my credit history. James didn't take his downfall gracefully. After our initial confrontation in the FPI conference room, he began sending threatening text messages, blaming me for his termination and financial ruin. When I blocked his number, he started showing up at our house, pounding on the door and demanding to speak with Noah. The final straw came when he appeared at my school, creating a scene in the front office. The security footage of his tirade gave me all the evidence I needed for a temporary restraining order, which the judge granted immediately. The police investigation into James's financial activities expanded beyond the company fraud. Detective Ramirez, a compassionate officer specializing in financial crimes, explained that they had uncovered evidence of tax evasion and potentially other victims of James's manipulation. Unfortunately, Mrs. Carter, your husband, appears to have been living beyond his means for quite some time. Detective Ramirez told me during an interview, Ms. Peterson wasn't his only relationship. We've identified at least 2 other women who received expensive gifts charged to either company accounts or credit cards in your name. And this revelation should have hurt, but instead it reinforced that I had never really known the man I married. The James I thought I loved was as much a fiction as his financial integrity. The most unexpected development came through an anonymous tip to the company's ethics hotline. Someone from within FPI had evidence that James had been selling proprietary trading strategies to competitors. This elevated the case from civil to potential federal charges, with the SEC becoming involved. Through all this, Noah was my primary concern. The school counselor recommended a child psychologist specializing in family trauma, Dr. Winters, who began seeing Noah twice weekly. At first, Noah was reluctant, but Dr. Winters' gentle approach and understanding of children from broken homes gradually earned his trust. Noah is carrying a lot of responsibility for a child his age, she told me during our parent consultation. He feels he needs to be the man of the house now protecting you. We're working on helping him understand that while his intentions were good, children need to be children. Noah's school performance had suffered initially, but with support from his teachers and regular sessions with Dr. Winters, he began to stabilize. His friendship with Tyler remained strong, though both boys had learned a significant lesson about the consequences of their actions. Media attention was inevitable once formal charges were filed against James. Local business publications ran stories about the corporate fraud case, and when the SEC involvement became public, even the national financial press picked up the story. To protect Noah, I declined all interview requests and worked with the school to ensure reporters couldn't access him. The unwanted publicity had an unexpected positive effect. A women's advocacy group specializing in financial abuse reached out to offer support services. Through their program, I connected with other women who had experienced similar betrayals, finding strength in shared stories and recovery strategies. One morning, about 3 months after Noah's fateful email, I received a letter with no return address. Inside was a handwritten note from Megan. Chelsea, I don't expect your forgiveness, but you deserve to know the truth. James manipulated me just as he did you. He told me you were separated, that you had agreed to an open relationship while finalizing your divorce. When I discovered the debt he'd left you with, I was horrified. I've been cooperating with the investigation and wanted you to know that I'm truly sorry for the pain I contributed to. No one deserves what he did to you and your son. The letter brought an unexpected sense of closure. Megan had been fooled just as I had been, albeit in different ways. I couldn't bring myself to hate her, knowing we had both been victims of James's elaborate deceptions. As the legal proceedings against James continued, Noah and I focused on rebuilding our lives. The settlement from FPI, combined with the release from fraudulent debt, gave us financial breathing room. After consulting with a financial advisor recommended by Mark Turner, I made the difficult decision to sell our house. This is too much house for just the 2 of us now, I explained to Noah as we packed boxes. And we can find a place that's truly ours, not filled with memories of Dad. Noah looked around his room, then nodded with surprising maturity. Can I paint my new room blue? Dad never let me because he said it would lower the house value. Any color you want, I promised, adding another item to the mental list of small controls James had exerted that I'd never fully noticed. We found a charming 2-bedroom cottage in a good school district, smaller but cozy with a backyard, perfect for Noah's growing interest in gardening, a therapeutic activity recommended by Dr. Winters. The mortgage was manageable on my teacher's salary, and with the equity from selling the larger house, I was able to establish a new college fund for Noah. Through Amanda's encouragement, I joined a community center art class as a way to process my emotions. The creative outlet became a weekly sanctuary, 3 hours, where I could focus entirely on translating feelings to canvas. Noah called my abstract paintings Mom's Feelings in Colors and insisted on hanging his favorites in our new living room. 6 months after Noah's email changed everything, I received an unexpected invitation to coffee from Mark Turner. What I had assumed would be a casual check-in about Noah and Tyler's friendship turned into something more when Mark nervously asked if I might consider having dinner with him sometime, not as Tyler's dad, but just as a man who's come to admire you greatly. My immediate instinct was refusal. My trust had been so thoroughly shattered that the thought of dating seemed impossible. Seeing my hesitation, Mark quickly added, "No pressure at all. Friendship is valuable too." That gentle understanding, so different from James's manipulative charm, stayed with me. A week later, I called Mark and accepted his dinner invitation, making it clear that friendship was all I could offer for now. His response, "I'd be honored to be your friend Chelsea," was refreshingly genuine. Our first dinner was slightly awkward but pleasant. Mark was a widower who had raised Tyler alone for 5 years after his wife's death from cancer. His work in financial crimes had given him a perspective on betrayal and healing that few could understand. Most importantly, he spoke openly about his finances, his parenting challenges, and his past, with a transparency I found both unfamiliar and deeply reassuring. As Noah and I approached the 1-year mark of James's departure, I realized how far we had come. The initial devastation had gradually transformed into resilience. I had discovered strengths I never knew I possessed: the ability to rebuild financially, to parent through crisis, to open myself to new friendships, and even the possibility of trust again. Noah, now 11, had weathered the storm with remarkable adaptability. His sessions with Dr. Winters had decreased to monthly check-ins, and his school performance had rebounded completely. The other day, I overheard him telling a new friend, "My dad made some bad choices, but my mom is amazing. We're doing great now." Those simple words validated everything I'd fought for during the past year to give Noah security and hope despite the chaos his father had caused. James eventually accepted a plea deal, receiving a 5-year sentence for the corporate fraud, with additional penalties for the identity theft and financial abuse. Noah chose not to visit him, a decision I supported while leaving the door open should he change his mind someday. For now, we were focused on building our new life rather than revisiting the pain of the old one. The most unexpected outcome of this difficult journey was my new role as a resource for other women facing financial abuse. What began as sharing my story in the support group evolved into regular speaking engagements at women's shelters and community centers. I developed a simple workshop on financial literacy and warning signs of financial control, drawing on my painfully acquired expertise. One evening, as Noah and I walked along the beach near our new home, he asked, "Are you still sad about what Dad did?" I considered the question carefully. "Sometimes, but mostly I'm grateful." "Grateful?" His face showed surprise. "Grateful that we found out who he really was. Grateful that we're stronger now. And especially grateful for you, your courage, your heart, and yes, even your impulsive email that changed everything." Noah kicked at the sand. "I still shouldn't have done it without telling you." "True," I agreed. "But sometimes the wrong action for the right reason works out in ways we never could have planned." He was quiet for a moment. "I think I want to be a lawyer when I grow up, to help people like us." I smiled at this new ambition replacing his previous dream of becoming a pilot. "You'd be an amazing lawyer." As we watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, I realized that the security I had sought in marriage had never truly existed. Real security came from within, from knowing my own strength, from the unbreakable bond with my son, from the community that had rallied around us in our darkest hour. Sometimes it takes losing everything to discover what truly matters. In my case, it took my 10-year-old son's desperate attempt to protect his mother to reveal not only the truth about my husband, but also the truth about my own resilience. Noah's innocent wisdom had set us on a path I never would have chosen, but that ultimately led to a more authentic life. Children often see truth more clearly than adults, clouded by years of compromise and rationalization. His simple desire for justice accomplished what my adult fear and uncertainty might never have attempted. As we turned toward home, Noah's hand in mine, I silently thanked him for the chaotic gift that had ultimately saved us both. Have you ever faced a moment when someone tried to help you in a way that initially seemed to make things worse, Or have you had a child's perspective change how you viewed a difficult situation? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. And if you found our journey meaningful, please subscribe to hear more real-life experiences of overcoming challenges and finding unexpected strength. Your support means the world to me and Noah as we continue to share our story to help others. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes our greatest challenges reveal our deepest strength.